And we're back. I'm super excited to be continuing our conversation. Welcome to this special series of Embracing Your Voice, Unleashing Your Power Within. My name is Patricia Hayes, and with me is my lovely dear friend, Brienne Hennessy, and we're going to have some fun today at my expense. I mean, y'all, if you knew coming in, we should have been recording because Brienne was already on me. She was like, I'm going to need you to do your breathing. I mean, actually, we're going to do it. But before we start there,
yes.
Before we start there, this is number 3 of a 4-part special series that we've been doing where we've been really focusing in on the power of your voice, your literal voice, and how you can utilize it, protect it, and I want to say leverage because that's not the right word I'm coming to, but there is some leveraging. What was it?
Elevate, perhaps.
Elevate. I like that. Elevating it in a way that supports you personally and professionally, which also takes us a little into some internal, not just the external.
Right.
I am an executive advisor, leadership empowerment coach, and networking strategist. And it means I talk a lot to a lot of people and have for my entire career in all the things. And this is how I, even as someone who's done public speaking for over 30 something years, have never really focused on voice care in a way that supports my public speaking. And so, Brienne, tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back. I am so excited to be here for part 3. And my goal in this mission is to really bring preventative voice care to more people. So my background is as a speech and voice pathologist, which essentially means for 14 years, I rehabilitated injured voices. But there is definitely a gap between the point where you need to be in a medical clinic getting medical care and the period of time where you can actually be taking care of, healing, and preventively training your voice for speaking of all kinds. And that's my mission in this space. And so now my business really focuses on guiding people through the process of voice health, as well as what it means to speak as their truest self. And we're going to get into that in our part 4 as well. But essentially, if you are speaking in a way that resonates with you, feels like you, that's going to connect with the audience. If you are speaking in a way that your voice is not able to handle the load, that will also have an impact on your audience. And we're going to get into the nuances of that. So I've been really fortunate to now have, now it's 17 years total, including this 4 years of my business, focused on all things voice. I'm also a professional speaker. I'm an author. I'm a mama. It's all the things. So all the things. So I'm really, really glad to be here again and having this as such a elevated topic for something that most people take for granted.
Yes. And we really have been talking about that, about how we take for granted something we use every single day, right?
Yes.
Whether it's for work or not, it is something. And this is what we're going to get into a little bit today, or completely today, about how your everyday life can impact it. And so I'm laughing because here's how we started before we started recording. I came in all frazzled and I was just like, oh my goodness. So I'm like trying to, okay, take my deep breaths and do it. And so I did that. And I did that twice before the lovely Miss Brienne here was like, so I'm going to need you to, I'm going to need you to do that deep breath and that hum without the lifting of the shoulders. Y'all, I love this woman. But when I tell you about the angel, the voice angel on your shoulder, which is the name of today's episode, in real life, IRL, that's literally what happened. So I did this, and Brienne is going to show you how she gently corrected me. So I was like, And then the voice came.
Patricia, would you be open to maybe trying it from a lower place in your body? Again. Now, for those of you watching, you will see a significant change in the efforting that Patricia puts in. For those of you listening, it's okay if you don't detect a difference. I do. I've been listening to voices for all these years, so I am listening for certain things, but there is a distinctive resonance and fullness to her voice when she does that second round. Plus, she just looks more at ease. And ultimately, that's the goal. We all just need tools and things that will bring us more peace and ease and nourishment.
Yes.
Yes. And I will say the voice angel on the shoulder, Patricia gets kudos for coming up with that one. That we'd have to look back. That was at least a couple of years ago. You were like in the DMs saying that phrase. And so I just appreciate that that's kind of a visual for you to think of, like, oh yeah, that's how she comes about. So that's all her that came
Wait, but now let's talk about those DMs, because I already have a few stories. I've said I'm willing to share. We're going to put myself on that stage and let Brienne would never toss eggs, but you get the idea. Folks would, toss some eggs, but literally hilarious. This is my friend. She was like, well, maybe we should have gone through those DMs for this episode. I'm like, oh no. We should not have gone through those DMs, because I will tell you one of the tricks that this beautiful woman uses is I'm just going to tell you, it's wonderful, and just be prepared if you reach out to her. She does not do DMs like normal people. Brienne, she talks to you. So you're going to get this beautiful voice message with all of this love and joy coming through. That's going to just naturally guide you to say, oh, let me respond in kind, right? With the voice thing. Now, I'm going to tell you, I fell for that the first couple of times. But then I knew one day when I was not sounding the way I needed to sound, I was not responding by voice. I texted, and then I said, and I'm on to you now.
Yep.
It's the equivalent of walking into your chiropractor's office and you're complaining about, neck and shoulder pain. And you're like, well, maybe you should put down the 10-pound purse on your shoulder. It's the equivalent of that.
Exactly. I do love voice texts, voice DMs, just the fact that we can do voice notes. Now, I know there's a subset of people who dislike them vehemently because they don't want to take time to listen to them, even if they're 30 seconds. I hear you. I see you. That's okay. I will probably still respond with a voice note. And when people respond with one, it just lights me up, first of all. Most people say, I didn't even know I could do voice notes. And secondly, yes, if there is an opportunity for, some back and forth relative to how the voice is sounding, you've been one of the many who's open to that and who considers, what? But notice, this is the theme that we talked about the last two sessions too. Notice how that awareness was still there. You were like, ooh, my voice is, maybe not where I'd like it to be. And keep in mind, Patricia's not saying this from any sort of like judgment space. This is just that awareness of like, let me save myself that extra talking, because why put on that extra load if you don't have to? And then you text. So I just want to point that out too, because your awareness thread is constant through this. And that's one of our key goals with this series, is to make sure it's just those reminders, like mindfulness. You just are coming back to what is going to serve me in the moment. And if extra talking doesn't serve, don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, and so, talking about in real life, that we're going to jump ahead a couple and come back, but that literally was me earlier this week, right? So we had planned on doing this second set of recordings earlier in the week. And I had anticipated having some more downtime over the weekend. That did not happen, so that I could get more relaxed and just be ready to, to do that on Monday. And that was not happening because my weekend was nuts. I didn't get the rest that I needed. And I knew going into, from the weekend into that Monday, I was like, I am not going to be in the brain or body space to engage in a way that I need to. And so that it could be effective in what we're doing, right? And knowing that we were going to be spending some time talking and sharing. And so I was like, I need us to move it, because, and Brienne was so graceful, gracious in agreeing to do so because she understood. It's like, you're a little war, huh?
And it all, all of this is part of the holistic well-being approach too, that I take, and that it is one of those components where, and I could say this too, because I know your voice so well now, your voice would have revealed how fatigued you were too. Yes. And that doesn't serve you or anyone else either, for it to be that kind of level of a clue, right? You already knew from your body, but historically that wasn't always the case. Like when we first met, and that's one of the examples you're going to talk about, like pushing through was just kind of your MO.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, for sure. For sure. Oh my gosh. Okay. So here is one of my favorite voice stories because, everyone who knows me knows I am the mom of an athlete. My boy child is a football player. So there I am. I mean, he's been playing since he was age 3. But, he's high school playing at this varsity level. I mean, so we're out there in that air, loud and going, and all the, yelling and rah-rahing and all of that stuff. So I've been having, doing that. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of this allergy stuff like that. But I also had an issue with some edema that are allergy triggered, all of these different things. So I have all these, a couple of other medical things that go on that affect it. And I'm going to these football games, like just, yelling and carrying on. And I made the mistake of having a conversation with Miss Brienne after one of those moments. And it had to be pretty bad, though, seriously, because, football games are on Thursday or Friday nights.
Right.
So that meant this was through a weekend before I spoke with her. We were just having one of our regular coffee chats, and she was like, and so what's going on? When she heard me. And that's because I was out there at those football games yelling and carrying on like I didn't use my voice for my living. And honestly, it truly had never crossed my mind. Like, it's one of those things where, and you go to the games and you do stuff and you're like, well, and then you have some hoarseness later and you're like, okay, that's just part of that. Yeah. But when it's a part of what you do every day for your career, for your profession, recognizing that, so maybe I can engage like that, or I need to be more aware. Because for me, what that meant, this is how it applies. And Brienne will jump in here and be like, okay, this is, what we have to talk about. Because I record coffee chats twice a week for years. And even if they weren't live, like I stopped doing them so much live more recently, but I was still doing them. I think I'm up to 6 years. I was doing them twice a week and then some. So that's just the regular stuff. And so to know that I could enter into a period where I needed to do the recordings, or if I was doing them live, because I was at one point doing them both live all the time, it would cave. My voice wouldn't hold up. I didn't have the air. It didn't sound right. And I'd have to oh my goodness. And so roll back to football mom yelling at the games and then getting on the phone with Brienne. And here's what the lovely angel on my voice angel on my shoulder had to say.
So is there anything that you did that was a little more vocally intensive this weekend, Patricia? Pretty sure it was something like that. And you're like, well, yeah, went to the game. Of course I did, every weekend. And you point out a key thing. Yes, people tend to not think about it because you're in the excitement, you're cheering, you're supportive. Great. Our voices are capable of doing that. And we have to look at the other mitigating factors, whether it's how much you already talk for your living every day, any other medical and irritant components that might be coming in. But the key thing that you said too is, well, yeah, I get a little hoarse, but then what? It's actually not normal to get that hoarseness and have that last after that kind of voice use. It can be trained to be used safely, but when it's hoarse and doesn't resolve on its own, or when it kind of stays a little bit off to the point that even the next week you're getting ready for a coffee chat live and you're like, I don't know, something still doesn't feel quite right. This is not intended to take away the things that you love or how you love to express yourself. I may have even suggested my favorite, which is using a cowbell instead of your voice at the beginning. Some other noisemaker, which is possible. But really, we have to look at what's the overall dose. And so when you go to any of those games, you've been going for how many years to support him?
Years.
Why now, right? Why now? Sometimes we can say and look hindsight and say, these are the predictive factors. This is probably why it's gotten worse. And sometimes not. So again, for any of y'all, be gentle with yourself, because it's not like it's a, clear cut, if then this kind of outcome. But it's when these all start to kind of build on one another and things then start to kind of fall apart with the voice, that then some of your favorite social activities are when it creeps in. Going out to the football games, going out with friends, being at a concert.
Yes.
These are the times that people are like, but I was fine earlier this week. Okay, you were on your threshold. You were on that threshold. You didn't know it, but that's what tipped the scales.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so my adjustments after that for that particular thing, and it, like I said, it's going to bleed into this next one, but my adjustments after that were, number one, I was also the videographer for my son's games. So that literally kept me from having to have some XF movement, because, you can't just yell, you got to yell and move.
Yeah.
And so since I was doing most of the video, that kept me contained some, because again, that awareness. Right. It's just so much awareness that kept me contained, son. And then my adjustments from just regular yelling, it's like I might talk to the person next to me, but I'd have a phrase that I would say, and then I'd be done, right? So it's always that's my boy. And I might yell that out, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't, and that was how I adapted to, and to be constantly aware of what it could do for me later.
That's so smart. Exactly. And once you get in the routine of that, and yes, there's still whistling, clapping, signs, non-vocal ways to show support. But the fact that you still made it work for you and what you needed without reducing what felt like that energetic show, of love and support, I think that's amazing.
Yes. Now, added on to the fact of I live in the allergy capital of the world, Austin, Texas. That is not a joke, you all. Allergies are the worst here.
Yeah.
And I have suffered from them for many years. And I had gone so really well. And then I had a relapse in recent years. So I started having these issues that, coupled with some edema episodes that I would have, would trigger. So I could have allergies bother me, and then it would do something. And for me, because, I can't do anything small when it comes to this stuff, it would settle in my throat. So I would literally, now this is the part that gets traumatizing, right? When I'm thinking about it, because I'm like, oh, wait, what do I need to reschedule, whatever? Because a simple allergy attack that would have settled in my throat and become this big, huge thing, y'all. So we're not just talking about a little sore throat or whatever.
Or a little scratch or an itch. No,
I mean, Brienne knows. She was like, oh my gosh. It was to the point of, she's like, have you been to the doctor? I mean, so it was that serious.
Yeah.
And it turned out there was more to it. But I was, still going to these games and doing the things. And my adjustments there, even before talking to her, was I knew I was still wearing a mask to football games long after, it was better. We weren't social distancing. But for me, I needed that for double protection, right? Because it helped to keep all those horrible allergens out while
Yeah.
I'm sitting out in this air for 3 or 4 hours at a time,
Right.
that for me could trigger a whole other host of things that
Yeah.
would absolutely impact my ability to do my work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I think is interesting about that again goes back to awareness, is that I feel like and correct me please if I'm wrong, even the last 6 months has been so much better as far as any severe episodes.
Yes.
And this is where it's called compensation. This is where the underlying issue, let's say, when in your case the allergies flare and you're struggling even more, things tend to start to push or try to help, or the voice, because it's already impacted in that way and getting scratchier or more effortful, that can lead to kind of temporary compensation of trying to do what you need to do. The allergens resolve for the time being, and yet those compensatory or pushing through habits still remain.
Yeah.
Because you were trying to get through. So that's what, again, I appreciate about your awareness. It's not like, oh, good, allergy episode done. Great. My voice is back. All the things are well and good. It's just noticing that once we are kind of back to what is someone's natural baseline. That's what I'm always trying to help people find. Where is your most natural voice? What does that feel like? What does that sound like? And then, yes, in the ebb and flow of life, when there are these different issues or flare-ups, how do we recalibrate to that and enhance it further? But if you're always kind of spinning around this, like, it's struggling, it's a little better, it's struggling, that's kind of this vicious cycle.
The vicious cycle and the balance, because for me, it did escalate to a medical thing, right? So I had to go to a doctor to address some of those other things, which of course resulted in the thing I hate the most, which is taking little pills, to help keep the nasty things away.
Yeah.
But that has an effect too, right? And I'm sure Brienne has dealt with other people, because some of that stuff can be so drying.
Yes.
So it's your daily practice of not just doing what the doctor says as far as any medical things following up, but also trying to sleep better. That's still a struggle, right? Drinking enough, staying hydrated. That has been that's a thing that's really a telltale sign for me these days.
Yes.
Is I know, because when I'm not been drinking, once you get to a certain level of staying hydrated and then you drop, like, it's an immediate response in your body. And for me, for sure, in my voice and my ability to last for periods of time.
Absolutely.
And all the other things, I loved wearing scarves. That was one of the first things, right? Because I just wanted to do it, and you were like, "Oh, yay!" And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "No, that's good for."
That's fine.
I don't want to, state the, whatever. But I was like, "Oh, great! One of my lovely little just fashion habits is good for protecting my voice."
Exactly. Also, can we just, as we decided would be great someday on a shirt, you're going to normalize sipping right now. Pardon us.
Yes.
Not enough people do this when they are in these kind of conversations, virtually or in person. And so when that dehydration sensation comes in, and we're not talking chronic medical levels of dehydration.
No.
We're talking those levels where you notice your thirst, you notice the brain fog, maybe you're feeling a little, off with your energy. It's often you're kind of under or hypohydrated, not yet, again, dehydrated. That's like the severe medical level. But exactly, if you're already there, then you're playing catch up. Okay, so then we're here, but that's still the bare minimum, right? Baseline. So when she's talking about y'all, like, experimenting, trying these different things, noticing those are little adjustments that all play into this bigger picture of bringing your voice to the level it's meant to be.
Yes.
So that's beautiful. That's
awesome. And for me, I know when I have perhaps pushed through and not, had enough liquids in me, because after I've been known to, to do 2, maybe 3 recordings at a time, and having to take that break in between because that phlegm buildup is just, which means I'm clearly not hydrated enough.
Correct.
Um,
And we might
yeah,
have, and we'll have to listen back. We might have touched on this, I think, in the first session.
yes,
So y'all listen back. But just remember, 24 hours minimally is usually what it takes for water to get through our system. Vocally speaking, the science is not there yet for us to know exactly how much of that water we drink gets to this lovely larynx. It has its own self-lubricating mechanisms, but they're still looking for the kind of, direct correlation between if you drink this much. So go back a step. And if you have a lot of things upcoming, you're not going to be hydrated if you guzzle an hour before the thing.
yep,
That's not going to cut it. So
yep.
24, even 48 hours before is when you want to really make sure. But like you were saying, Patricia, if you already are like, oh, this is my new level of like, this is just how much I hydrate every day, baseline, great. But just know that, yeah, that's a big myth that I continue to see is people are like, oh, I'm already feeling it. I better guzzle to get through this next hour of recording.
No,
That's not where it's at.
I had to. I mean, when I was some years ago, but I realized I had to implement again the competition with my son, the athlete, because I'm very hard on making sure, because he competes at such a high level and so hard. He's a running back, so that meant that I was always making sure he had enough water, that he had enough food, and I wasn't doing the same thing. So that's literally one of those things. That's why Brienne's laughing, because she was like, oh, so you think maybe that should apply to you? And I was like, oh, so I'm up here yelling at him about making sure you get 100 ounces a day in, and making sure he does it. And Brienne's like, so
how's your ounce? Where are your ounces at?
Where are your ounces at?
Yeah. And everybody's ounces are different. So don't fall for that, 8 cups a day thing. We talked about that. But I love that, right? Like, what are we so quick to be like, well, I can see these things in all these other folks, but it can always start with us. Always.
Always starts with us. So it's there are things that we just, I just laugh at myself and I'm like, oh, okay. It's that whole thing of you can give great advice to other people, but you don't take it for yourself.
Oh yeah.
These are the things.
100%.
Unless you get an angel that sits on your shoulder to say, hey. So I want to hear some more, because we just could keep going. But some of those other, daily top tips I put for dealing with Patricia's.
And she says dealing with, and I say caring for.
Yes, I'm sorry. She says caring for.
She says dealing with.
Dealing with.
And I would say the couple big things that stand out are the openness and curiosity, right? Patricia never once has said, no, I don't want to hear about that. Y'all know her sense of humor. It is epic. So there is that underlying lightness that she's going to bring to it, even if she's going to be sassing you at the same time. You're both sassy, so it works. But it's coming with that openness and curiosity is a really important piece with this work. I always want to encourage folks to be on their own self-growth journey. And by default, she and I kind of are that way naturally, but we hope to always bring forth folks like that in both of our work, because as a strategic networker, you want to be around people who are willing to grow for themselves. And so those are some of the bigger things I look at when I think of, okay, what is it about this delightful interaction I get to have with Patricia in particular, because she's sharing her stories today. But a lot of it is because it can continue through this thread of openness, curiosity, willingness to learn, and to also be patient with oneself. And
I like that.
Yeah, when you're patient with yourself, you have that ability to recognize that everything is always working out for you. It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, especially with voice. There's no quick fix in voice and anything in life, frankly. And I think that's where we can look at that bigger intention of then, okay, what then becomes priority? And that's a big factor too. Someone who is saying, okay, yeah, this is important, but also I'm going to ignore it. That's that awareness piece. They don't even want to try, versus when does it become priority? And that's the preventative piece, not waiting until you are at, triage level, and saying, oh my gosh, now we have to kind of, get things back on track. So I know that, because we already talked about some like concrete voice tips previously, but this is how I look at it from a bigger approach of why people put in the time, because it takes time. There is going to be practices. There's going to be mindset shifts. There's going to be inner beliefs that have to come through with this. This is not I can keep doing the same thing I've always done and get a different result. That's not how this works. And it's also unique to each person. So just knowing that if you can hold space for yourself to say, I want this to fill in the blank, be a exploration versus a prescriptive, I must do it this way, I must do it like Patricia does it, I must do it like Brienne does it, then that will open up so many more possibilities for you. And people will notice. It's one of those things where we'll get into this in our next segment as well. That's where the voice is inextricably attached to what we believe is possible for ourselves, what we believe when we are speaking, how we show up to work, to play, to communicate. It's all intertwined.
Yes. And so my leadership nugget, because Bria was like, I'm sure you'll come up with something. Yes, and I'm kind of off the cuff on that. But for me, the leadership nugget for this particular session is that self-awareness, right? And recognizing and listening to yourself, not just to your voice, but internally as well, because it matters. And when you recognize that, then you can then do what we're going to talk about next, which advocate for yourself and take those actions that you need to in order to make sure that you are who you need to be for the next level. So that's what I got.
I love it. And I will say, if you're open to it, I'm gonna say it anyway. I would like to acknowledge and honor Patricia's journey from what we would call perfectionistic Patricia to this version that y'all are experiencing today, who is in her awareness, who is doing the work in the ways that work for her in this season of life. And that right there is that patience with self, that grace with self, that I can self-deprecate and joke and laugh, but underneath that, I actually legit know that this is something that is important and I am worthy to do it. So thank you, friend.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
There's nothing else to be said after that. She's trying to make me cry on here. So we have one more session, you all, where we are really going to talk about empowerment. And so I hope that you will join us for that last session. And we look forward to talking with you again soon. All right.
Bye.